It was late afternoon, and Eleanor Harper stood in front of her bedroom mirror, holding a soft blue dress up against her chest. It wasn't new, but it was clean, pressed, and carried memories. She had worn it to Daniel's graduation years ago, a day she was so proud of. Now, she smoothed the wrinkles and smiled gently, trying to remind herself that today was another special day. Daniel, her only son, was celebrating his 10th wedding anniversary with his wife, Olivia. The party was all over social media. People had been talking about it for weeks. It was supposed to be a grand event, 5-star hotel, celebrity caterer, designer decor, hundreds of guests. Eleanor hadn't received a formal invitation, but she didn't think much of it. Maybe it got lost, she mumbled to herself as she clasped her simple gold earrings. Maybe he thinks I'll just come by for a little while. She had raised Daniel with love and sacrifice. After her husband died in a car accident when Daniel was only 6, Eleanor had worked cleaning jobs and did night shifts at a bakery just to keep the lights on. She never complained. She saved every little penny for Daniel's school, for his clothes, for his dreams. So today, even if no one told her directly, she knew where her heart needed to be, by her son's side, celebrating his life. Eleanor picked up a small silver box. Inside it was a delicate bracelet she had found at a small shop weeks ago. Not expensive, but beautiful. She wrapped it carefully and tucked it into her handbag. As she walked to the front door, she took one last look at herself in the mirror. Her gray hair was pinned back neatly, her dress hung softly on her frame, and her eyes, tired but warm, still carried love. She didn't wear fancy perfume or branded shoes, but she had dignity. And she had hope. The hotel was grand, far grander than she expected. The entrance had floral arches, red carpet, photographers snapping pictures, valet staff, and waiters holding trays of champagne. Eleanor walked through the doors quietly, trying not to get in anyone's way. No one greeted her. No one noticed her. She wasn't wearing diamonds. She didn't glide in with heels and makeup. She just stood there, watching from a corner as guests laughed, posed, and showed off their designer dresses. She spotted Daniel in the distance, tall, handsome, and smiling nervously. He was always a little shy in big crowds. Then she saw Olivia Blake Harper. She was stunning. Her red dress sparkled like rubies under the chandelier. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, and her voice clear and confident as she moved through the crowd, hugging guests and thanking them for coming. Eleanor's lips curled into a quiet smile. Olivia was beautiful, no doubt. And Daniel looked happy. That's all that mattered. She clutched the gift box tightly and took a small step forward. But before she could reach them, Olivia noticed her. Their eyes met. For a second, Olivia's smile froze. Her body stiffened. She excused herself from the guest she was talking to and walked straight toward Eleanor. "Eleanor," Olivia said in a voice that was loud enough to be polite, but sharp enough to be cold. "You made it." "Yes," Eleanor replied softly. "I just wanted to drop by and see you both. It's a lovely celebration." Olivia looked her up and down. Eleanor wasn't wearing makeup. Her dress was old. Her shoes were basic. And in a room full of wealthy, well-dressed socialites, she stood out, and not in a way Olivia liked. Olivia leaned in a little, lowering her voice. "I wasn't expecting you tonight," she said with a tight smile. "It's just, this is a high-end guest list. You know, Daniel's business partners, sponsors, brand reps. They have certain expectations." Eleanor's face didn't move. She just stood still, eyes calm, voice steady. "I understand," she said quietly. Olivia seemed relieved. She added quickly, "We have an image to maintain. I hope you're not offended." Eleanor shook her head once. "No, not offended." "Okay, good," Olivia said, already half-turning. "I'll tell Daniel you stopped by. He'll be so happy." Eleanor opened her mouth to say something, maybe just congratulations. But no words came out. She looked at the box in her hand. Then she looked at Olivia walking away, back to the golden lights, the cameras, the applause. No one saw Eleanor leave. She didn't make a scene. She didn't cry. She just turned and walked out the way she came in. But someone did notice. The hotel manager, who had been standing near the check-in desk, nodded slightly as she passed by. A gesture of respect, small but genuine. Eleanor gave him a tired smile and disappeared into the evening. She walked slowly to the bus stop. The air was cool, and the city lights shimmered around her. In her hands, the gift box felt heavier now. Not because of its weight, but because of the silence that came with it. She sat on the bench, staring at the bracelet she had bought with her pension money. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the lid and looked at it. Olivia had told her she didn't belong, that she didn't fit in. And maybe, in that world of flashing lights, expensive gowns, and champagne towers, she didn't. But the truth Olivia didn't know was this. Eleanor had paid for that entire celebration. Weeks ago, Daniel had come to her in private. Quiet, embarrassed, desperate. "Mom," he had said, "I need help. I don't have the money for this event. I don't want to tell Olivia. She's been dreaming about it. Can you lend me something, just until things pick up?" Eleanor didn't even ask questions. She gave him everything she had. Every dollar she saved from baking orders, cleaning jobs, and her widow's pension. And now she had been asked to leave. The words rang in her ears again. "We have an image to maintain." As if she were something to hide. Something embarrassing. Something low-class. She placed the box gently back in her bag. She didn't cry. She didn't get angry. But something deep inside her, something that had been quiet for years, began to stir. She had always believed love meant giving without asking anything back. But now, for the first time in her life, she began to wonder if even love needed to be seen. The bus ride home was quiet. Eleanor sat by the window, her purse on her lap, her hands folded over it. She didn't look out at the city lights or the rushing cars. She didn't replay Olivia's words. Not right now. What kept echoing in her heart was the promise she had made, the choice she had made, and the reason behind it. 3 weeks earlier. It had been a Sunday afternoon when Daniel came to visit. He usually only called these days. A visit was rare. Eleanor had just finished folding laundry when the doorbell rang. She opened the door and smiled. Daniel. He looked tired. Overworked. Even his shirt was wrinkled, something Olivia would never let slide. "Hi, Mom," he said, walking in. "Can we talk?" She made him tea, poured it into the same mug he'd used since he was a boy. She set out his favorite snack, banana bread, the way she always did. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, tapping his fingers on the wood. He was quiet for a long time. Then he finally said it. "I'm in trouble." Eleanor didn't interrupt. He looked at her with guilt in his eyes. "The company's not doing well. Cash flow problems. Investors are pulling out. We've had to let people go." Eleanor nodded slowly. "But Olivia, she doesn't know yet. She's been planning this huge anniversary party. Big venue. Press coverage. Influencers. She even hired a celebrity chef." He looked down at his hands. "I can't afford any of it, Mom. I don't even have money for the deposit. But if I tell her now, she'll be embarrassed. And angry. She wants this to be perfect." Eleanor watched her son speak, her heart aching. She remembered all the nights she stayed up sewing clothes for him. All the days she skipped meals so he'd have enough to eat. She remembered the joy on his face when he got into college, the same joy she worked 3 jobs to support. Now he was grown with his own life. But in front of her, he was still that same boy, worried, overwhelmed, and looking for help. "I don't want to let her down," he whispered. Eleanor took a deep breath and stood up. She walked to her bedroom, opened her drawer, and pulled out a small folder. Inside were savings, the ones she had quietly kept for emergencies. Nothing fancy. No bank statements. Just neatly stacked bills wrapped in paper bands. She returned to the kitchen and placed the folder in front of him. Daniel looked at it, confused. "Mom, what's this?" "I've been saving a little each month," she said simply. "From my cleaning work. Some from the widow's pension. I was putting it away for a rainy day." He opened the folder. His eyes widened. "Mom, this is a lot." "It's not much by the world's standards," she said with a gentle smile. "But it's enough to help you pay the deposit and start the arrangements. Use it. Let her have her big night." Daniel's lips trembled. He looked like he was about to cry. "I'll pay you back. I promise." Eleanor placed her hand over his. "This isn't a loan. This is love." He nodded slowly. Thank you so much. But can we just keep this between us? I mean, Olivia would hate to know I didn't manage it on my own." Eleanor gave him a sad but understanding look. "I won't say a word." Back in the present, Eleanor unlocked her front door and stepped inside. The silence was different now. It wasn't peaceful. It felt hollow. She placed her handbag on the small table by the door and walked to the kitchen. The same table where she had given Daniel the folder. The same room where she had poured her heart, again and again. She sat down. The bracelet, still wrapped in tissue, rested inside her bag. She didn't want to look at it. Because tonight, Olivia hadn't just humiliated her. She had erased her. Eleanor hadn't asked for recognition. She didn't want a speech or a gift. She hadn't expected a front-row seat or applause. But to be told, so coldly, that she didn't fit the image, in a room filled with lights and flowers she had unknowingly paid for. It was more than an insult. It was betrayal. Not just from Olivia, but from Daniel too. He had stood by and let this happen. Did he know she was coming? Did he even look for her when she left? Her phone was still silent. No missed calls. No messages. She placed it face down and stared at the table. For the first time, Eleanor didn't feel poor because of money. She felt poor in value. Everything she had poured into Daniel, the sacrifices, the years of struggle, the savings, had been invisible tonight. And suddenly, something shifted inside her. She realized she had become a background character in her own story. A quiet helper. A shadow behind the scenes. And maybe it was time that changed. The next morning, Eleanor rose early as always. She boiled water, made tea, swept the kitchen floor, and folded laundry. The same routine she had kept for decades. But her mind wasn't calm. As she sat with her cup of tea, she thought about the hotel manager. That brief nod. That respectful glance. He had seen her. Not as a guest. Not as a mother-in-law. But as someone who mattered. And suddenly, that one small moment meant more to her than all of Olivia's diamonds. She took a small notebook from her drawer and opened it. Inside were the phone numbers and contacts related to the event. Daniel had given them to her when she paid the deposit. She looked at the hotel's name. Her name was on the booking. Her money had covered the reservation. She wasn't invisible. She wasn't excluded. She had every right to be there. And Olivia? Olivia would soon find that out. Not through shouting, not through revenge, not through drama, but through the truth. And the truth always finds a way out. The night of the anniversary party was still buzzing in the city. Photos were already being posted on Instagram, videos on stories, and guests were sharing pictures of the decorations, the expensive dessert table, and Olivia's glittering red dress. To outsiders, it looked perfect. But inside the grand ballroom, something was about to crack. The party was in full swing. A soft jazz band played on a golden stage. Lights sparkled from the chandeliers. Guests smiled with wine glasses, posing in front of a massive floral wall that read, 10 Years of Love, in gold cursive letters. Daniel stood near the bar, laughing awkwardly with a client. But deep down, his stomach was tight. He hadn't seen his mother all evening. He checked his phone again. No message. No missed call. A part of him knew she had come. She had always come. She never missed anything. Birthdays. Graduations. Even when he didn't invite her, she still showed up, quietly, never asking for anything. He had hoped she wouldn't this time. Because deep down, he knew Olivia would say something. She always did. When she talked about Eleanor, it was always with a smile, but the words were cutting. She's sweet but old-fashioned. She means well, but I don't want her around important people. She's not used to luxury. She might embarrass us. Daniel would nod along. He didn't want to argue. He didn't want drama. So he stayed silent, thinking silence meant peace. But now that silence was echoing louder than ever. He hadn't even called his mother after last night. And as the ballroom filled with laughter and flashing cameras, all he could hear was the memory of her quiet voice. This isn't alone. This is love. Meanwhile, Olivia was in her element. She posed for photos with her friends, tossed her hair, laughed loudly, and thanked people for their compliments. Everything was just as she wanted, elegant, expensive, and filled with people who mattered in her world. Her parents sat at the front table, proud and dressed in designer outfits. Her best friend, Vanessa, was live-streaming the whole event. Olivia was glowing, until the hotel manager approached her with a calm, polite smile. "Excuse me, Mrs. Harper," he said softly. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Olivia turned, still smiling. "Of course. What is it?" "The remaining balance has just been charged to the original payment account. Everything has been settled. I just wanted to confirm." She blinked. "Oh, right. My husband handled that, I believe." The manager hesitated. "Actually, no. The payment account is under the name Eleanor Harper." The smile on Olivia's face froze. "I'm sorry, what?" "Mrs. Eleanor Harper," the manager repeated. "She's listed as the main booking contact, and the card was charged to her file. She also paid the deposit 3 weeks ago." Olivia's heart dropped. She glanced around the ballroom, suddenly feeling exposed. People had started to notice the conversation. Her friends nearby leaned in, curious. She tried to laugh. "That must be a mistake." She doesn't handle things like this. But the manager shook his head gently. It's confirmed in our system. All records are under her name. And with that, he politely stepped back. Olivia stood frozen, her throat dry. Daniel, she whispered harshly, pulling him aside. What is he talking about? Daniel didn't answer at first. Her voice grew sharper. Did your mother pay for this event? He looked at the floor. Yes. Her face turned pale. Are you serious? Daniel nodded. She gave me the money when I told her I couldn't afford it. She didn't want you to be disappointed. She asked me to keep it a secret. Olivia backed away, shaking her head. You let me kick her out. And she paid for all this? Daniel's voice cracked. I didn't think you'd say that to her. I thought she'd just drop by for a few minutes. She walked out, Daniel. In front of everyone. Daniel closed his eyes, the guilt swallowing him. And that's when the murmurs started. Guests were whispering. A few had overheard. Olivia's friend Vanessa had already turned around and was scrolling on her phone, as if confirming what she just heard. One of Olivia's aunts leaned toward her. Is it true? Your mother-in-law paid for this? Olivia couldn't answer. The room that once felt full of light now felt too bright, like every eye was watching her, judging her. Her parents stood up from the table, confused. What's going on? Her mother asked. Daniel stepped forward, trying to ease the situation. It's nothing. It's just a misunderstanding. But it was too late. The truth was out. Back at home, Eleanor sat by her window with a cup of tea. The room was dim but peaceful. She didn't expect anyone to call. Not tonight. And she didn't want an apology. What she wanted was finally happening. The truth had entered the room. And she didn't even have to be there. She didn't need revenge. She had dignity. And dignity speaks louder than shouting ever could. The night after the party was the quietest one Olivia had experienced in years. The house, usually filled with her chatter, her favorite music, and the clicking of her heels, felt silent, almost hollow. Her phone buzzed with texts and social media notifications, but this time, she didn't want to look. She had been exposed. Not in a dramatic scene or a public argument, but in the most humiliating way possible, with a quiet truth that had walked in on its own. People had seen it all. The hotel manager's words, Daniel's confirmation, the look on Olivia's face as it all sank in. And worst of all, her own words from earlier that evening. We have an image to maintain. They rang louder now, not just in her mind, but in the whispers online. Some guests had posted little clips. Others had left passive-aggressive comments. Imagine banning the person who paid for your big day. You can wear luxury, but class isn't bought. That poor mother-in-law, the real queen of the night. Olivia stayed up late scrolling through them, deleting the tags, blocking a few accounts, but nothing helped. Her perfect image had cracked. The next morning, Daniel stood in front of his mother's house. He hadn't slept either. He rang the bell. No answer. He rang again, then heard the soft sound of footsteps. The door opened slowly. There stood Eleanor, in her simple robe, holding a cup of tea. She looked calm, peaceful, not angry, but distant. Hi, Mom, Daniel said softly. Come in, she replied without emotion. He walked inside, feeling like a schoolboy who had disappointed his teacher. They sat at the kitchen table. The same table where, just weeks ago, she had handed him her savings without hesitation. He couldn't look her in the eye. I'm sorry, he said. Eleanor stirred her tea slowly. For what? For letting it happen. For not stopping her. For not defending you. She finally looked up. You didn't say anything when she asked me to leave, Daniel. That was your moment. And you let it pass. I was scared, he admitted. Scared of upsetting her. Scared of ruining the night. I thought if I kept the peace, it would all be okay. Eleanor nodded slowly. And what did it cost? Daniel swallowed hard. You. She placed her cup down and looked out the window. I didn't give you the money to buy respect. I gave it out of love, she said. But I never thought that love would make me feel so invisible. Daniel's shoulders slumped. I'm so ashamed, Mom. I don't deserve your forgiveness. There was a long pause. Eleanor didn't answer immediately. She stood up and walked to a small drawer near the sink. From it, she pulled out a piece of paper, the original hotel receipt with her name on it. She handed it to him. I'm not asking for repayment, but I am asking for boundaries. Daniel looked confused. I've lived my whole life giving quietly, thinking love means never saying no, she continued. But now I realize, love should never make you feel small. And if it does, something has to change. Tears filled his eyes. You're right. And I'm ready to change. I'll talk to Olivia. I'll make this right. Eleanor gave him a soft smile, the kind that carried both love and sadness. I hope you do. For your sake. Meanwhile, Olivia was pacing the living room. She had tried everything to control the narrative. She posted a long caption online, thanking family and supporters, and those who contributed to our celebration. But it felt hollow, even to her. She knew what people were thinking. She hadn't just hurt Eleanor, she had embarrassed herself. When Daniel came home, he looked her straight in the eye. We need to talk. Olivia sat down quietly, sensing the seriousness in his voice. He told her everything, from the moment he asked his mother for help to the moment she walked out of the ballroom. She never said a word, Olivia, he said. She just left. And you didn't even notice. Olivia's face turned red with shame. I was trying to protect our brand, our look, our ego, he interrupted. Not our family. She stayed silent. She gave us everything. And you treated her like an embarrassment. I didn't know, she tried. You didn't bother to ask, he said sharply. That night, Olivia cried. Not because she was attacked, but because she had been exposed, not just to the world, but to herself. All the glamour, the diamonds, the press coverage, none of it meant anything now. Because the woman she looked down on turned out to be the reason it all existed. A few days later, Eleanor received a letter in the mail. It wasn't from Daniel. It was from the hotel manager. Inside was a handwritten note. Mrs. Harper, I just wanted to say how honored we were to host your event. Your grace that night did not go unnoticed. If ever you need anything, for future bookings or support, you will always be welcome here. Thomas, event manager. Eleanor smiled gently. For once, someone had seen her. Not as a helper, not as a burden, not as a background character, but as the silent strength behind everything. Weeks passed. Daniel visited her more often now, not with problems, but with time. They had tea, played board games like they used to, and sometimes just sat quietly in each other's company. Olivia stayed distant for a while. She apologized in person, not once, but 3 times. She brought flowers. She tried to smile. Eleanor was polite, cordial, kind, but something had changed. She had forgiven, but she would never forget. And that was okay, because true revenge doesn't always need fire. Sometimes it only needs the quiet truth, spoken with dignity. That night, in that ballroom full of glitter and guests, Eleanor had walked out alone. But when the truth walked in after her, everyone else saw who the real heart of the celebration was. And that was the end of Eleanor's silence. Not with shouting, not with anger, but with grace. The classiest revenge of all.